If you enjoy this video, please remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like what you see on my channel and would like to support me on Patreon, click on the link below. The 1980s was a simpler time growing up. Being a kid was just awesome, and you felt like you could do anything. Going to the movies as a kid during the summer holidays in Adelaide in 1985 was a special treat for me, as I didn't get to see many movies in the cinema. I was just 12 years old, and I clearly remember seeing a film that has stuck in my memory all my life. The film was called Explorers, and it sparked my imagination, even today at the age of 45. Explorers was directed by Joe Dante. At this time, everyone knew this director mostly for his previous film, Gremlins in 1984, which was a monumental hit. Explorers was not a hit at the box office. The film sadly had its faults, especially with the cartoony ending, which many people say ruined the film, but this was due to the studio's interference, something that Joe Dante is sad about because he felt like the film was unfinished and still a work in progress. The script for Explorers was circulating in Hollywood for many years. Paramount bought the script solely because they felt these sort of coming-of-age fantasy films were very popular with audiences, especially films like E.T., The Extraterrestrial, which was a box office hit. Many directors were approached, like director Wolfgang Peterson, because he had just completed the box office family fantasy, The Never-Ending Story, which impressed the Paramount executives. Peterson wanted to film it in his native country of Germany. The studio decided to keep the shooting of the film in the US and have an American director make the film. Peterson was then hired by 20th Century Fox to take over the production of Enemy Mine. When director Joe Dante was approached, he had just come off Gremlins and given a script and liked what he read, but he didn't feel there was a third act. Dante said at the end, when the kids went to the planet, they'd go and play baseball. That was the plot. It seemed that wasn't quite enough. While discussing the script with Paramount executives, they said, "We can work on it while we're making the picture." Dante hired writer Eric Luke to discuss what they were going to do while the film was being made. Dante and Luke added a pop culture angle to the third act, which they thought would be funny. Unfortunately, the audience didn't think so when the film was released. The main premise of the story was about a young teen, Ben, who lives in the suburbs, who loves 50s science fiction movies. He dreams about a circuit board, which he draws after waking up, and contacts his nerdy scientific friend, Wolfgang Muller. Ben, Wolfgang, and new friend, Darren, discover that the circuit board typed in on Wolfgang's computer is some kind of force field. They decide to build a spaceship they can sit in, with a dome-like force field around it. They fly around the town and create havoc, and after decide not to fly around again in the spaceship. But after they all get the same dream, they realise it is an alien trying to contact them. For the part of Ben, they cast Ethan Hawke. Explorers was his feature film debut.
You know, I took some Polaroids of myself for a headshot, you know. One of them, they were doing these big casting calls for Explorers. Joe Dante had just had a tremendous success with Gremlins, and they were letting him kind of make this, it was a really big movie for the time. And I went in on this casting call, and I went on a series of auditions over and over again. And I finally got the part, and I think my parents freaked out when I got the part. They never thought that was a realistic option because it had all these problems, which is I had to go to LA to shoot the movie.
Explorers was also River Phoenix's feature film debut. Phoenix, who had grown up in communes in South America, was somewhat unfamiliar with popular culture of North America. During rehearsals, it became a running joke when he would attempt scripted well-known words and phrases and usually pronounce them incorrectly. Jason Presson was cast as Darren. This was the role River Phoenix was originally considered for, but Dante thought River was good enough to play another role, so he cast him against type as the nerdy Wolfgang Muller. River Phoenix was not at all happy playing the role of Wolfgang. River Phoenix would usually remove his glasses in between takes because he felt embarrassed in front of the girls in the cast. Amanda Peterson played Ben's love interest in the film, Laurie Swenson. Both River Phoenix and Ethan Hawke had a crush on Amanda during the shoot. Actor Robert Picardo, who was a regular actor for Dante, appeared in most of his films, playing 3 parts: the alien Hawke, the father of Hawke, and a space hero called Starkiller in the movie, playing in the drive-in scene. The sound effects were taken from the 1981 Atari game, Yar's Revenge.
Oh, Starkiller!
The name Starkiller was originally going to be the last name for Luke Skywalker for Star Wars. The look and voice of Starkiller was modelled after Elvis Presley. To play the role of Hawke and the father, Picardo had extensive makeup applied, facial makeup and full costume. Robert Picardo's mouth was the only part of him not completely covered, though his mouth was made up to blend in with the faces of the creatures. Robert Picardo said that the alien makeup was very uncomfortable. The Hawke makeup was like having a typewriter balanced on his head, and the father was like balancing a TV. Whilst the crew were enjoying lunch, he would have to sit there and take the pain, which drew him to tears and actually caused open lesions on his head. Rob Bottin was responsible for the alien makeup effects in the film. Although Robert Picardo received the actor credit for the father, Alien, his voice was actually provided by Frank Welker. Dick Miller, another regular of Dante's, would play Charlie Drake, a helicopter pilot who sees the flying spaceship and pursues the boys. Actor James Cromwell, known for his work on Babe, Star Trek First Contact, and LA Confidential, played Wolfgang's father in Explorers. Ben's mum was played by the Big Chill actress, Mary Kay Place. Eric Luke, the screenwriter of Explorers, has a cameo as Darren's teacher. Explorers was the first film that Industrial Light and Magic would actually co-produce with a major studio. In the middle of the production of Explorers, the studio changed hands. They wanted the production to be finished earlier, so director Dante had to rush production to completion. Joe Dante remarked, "The paint on the sets was literally wet, and when the kids stepped into the spaceship, they sunk into cement because it wasn't dry." After the shooting of Explorers wrapped, Dante and the team submitted a rough cut in late spring of 1985. The studio, however, wanted to take advantage of the busy summer market of movies being released in 1985, so they changed the release date from late August to early July. The studio then took it out of Joe Dante's hand. They asked him to stop editing the picture because they were going to put it out, and said that they found the perfect release date and thought the film would make a lot of money. What a tragedy that must have been for Joe Dante.
You know, it was a good script, but it didn't have a third act, and so our job was to try to give it a third act, but they had a release date that they wanted, and the release date was awfully close. I mean, this was October, and they wanted it out in June or something, and it was a big special effects movie for which huge sets had to be built and all that, and plus it had kids in it, which means you can only work X number of hours a day. So it was a real labor-intensive project.
Dante remarked, "There was a whopping hour and a half worth of footage on the cutting room floor." Dante said there was a lot of spiritual kind of stuff in the movie that didn't make it in at all. The finished full version of Explorers, after the editors put it together, was actually around 3 hours and 15 minutes long. The scene at the drive-in, where the boy of the young couple calls the special effects fake,
that looks so fake,
is supposed to be Ben's brother. Dante says there was a whole family subplot that is completely missing. Many sequences had to be redubbed, including one of the ending scenes where the boys are under the tree, to give the film a sense of closure. Dick Miller's character was also supposed to return in the third act of the film. The film was left pretty much unfinished. God, I wish I could see Joe Dante's final vision of that film. That would be truly awesome. Explorers was released on July the 12th of 1985. Unfortunately, most people were watching the Live Aid concert, which was being broadcast on the weekend of release.
And it has a lot of charm, and the kids were very charming, and I don't regret making the movie because I really loved the experience of making it. But in the end, it was extremely frustrating because not only didn't I get to finish the movie, but the day they released it was the day of the Live Aid concert. And it was like nobody went to the movies. And then they came back and said, well, nobody went to the movies. I said, no, of course not. You released it on the wrong date. A date that we all killed ourselves to make. And now it's got a Live Aid concert on it. So, but that's because the studio had been, the people who hired me had left and the new people had come in and they didn't give a crap whether the picture made any money or not. They just needed to get it out there and, you know, get those cans to the theater, and if it bombs, we'll blame the other guys. So, it was an interesting studio politics lesson that I would rather probably not have had.
I had this experience, and funnily enough, it became, I think, a really defining experience for me, Explorers, because of it was a massive failure. At the time, it came out, it was supposed to be this big hit, they spent a lot of money on it, and it really, I don't think it got one good review, and nobody went to see it, and...
It has a cult, but it does...
It does now.
Yeah.
Now there's certain people that
like it. Even then,
it.
there were a few people, but it was, Well, Joe has a cult, so...
To me, in the inside of it, it felt like I had let everyone down. It was this powerful, disappointing experience because I had been all hyped up and hepped up to believe that it was going to be the next E.T. and it was going to have I don't know what I thought, but I thought it was going to be important, and it was dismissed. And there could have been no better profession no better teaching for a young person for a life in the arts than that.
Explorers suffered badly its opening weekend and very quickly disappeared from the cinemas and made almost $10 million, which was rather small compared to films like Back to the Future. The promotion of Explorers was terrible, and all they released to promote the film was an awful trailer.
From the director of Gremlins, Explorers, coming this summer from Paramount Pictures. The adventure begins in your own backyard.
The poster they used as an advertisement didn't really do the film justice either. It shows none of the cast, only a BMX bike leaning against a wooden fence, with a light shining up behind the fence. Regardless of the negatives of making Explorers and not releasing a finished product, critics were quite kind. One critic remarked, "Explorers itself is bubble thin, but it glides by gracefully on the charm of its three young heroes and their vividly envisioned adventure in space." Another said, "Of all the Spielberg-inspired fantasy films afoot at the moment, Explorers is by far the most eccentric. It's charmingly odd at some moments, just plain goofy at others." The film actually did well in home video rentals and cable broadcast. One scene cut where Ben is on his way to school, catching a glimpse of Laurie combing her hair through her bedroom window as she gets ready for school. This scene was put back into the Australian VHS release of Explorers. Some of the home video releases actually reinstated two scenes, where Wolfgang has an encounter with the bully Steve Jackson and his gang, and a brief bit where the boys chase the tilt-a-whirl ride after they push it up a hill. And there was also a brief sequence at the end where Ben daydreams about the Thunder Road ship in the classroom was also added in some of the home video releases. Most of Joe Dante's film contained many references to science fiction movies and cartoons. Explorers is full of famous references. The name of the junior high school the kids attend is named the Charles M. Jones Junior High School, which is named after Chuck Jones, a classic Looney Tunes animator. The film contains many Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes references throughout the film. In the scene where the boys look through the junkyard for the pieces for their ship, the sled named Rosebud from Citizen Kane is seen sitting at the top of the pile of junk. There are even many references in the film to other Joe Dante films. One scene shows a newspaper headline reading, "Kingston Falls Riot, Still Unexplained." This was a direct reference to Gremlins, which can suggest that Explorers is in the same universe as Gremlins. The plot for Explorers was slightly revisited in an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation titled The Ninth Degree, when the character played by actor Dwight Schultz is telepathically instructed on how to modify the ship to enable it to visit the aliens. The score for Explorers is composed by the legendary Jerry Goldsmith. Most of Joe Dante's films were composed by Jerry Goldsmith. They had a good working relationship, and Goldsmith seemed to understand Dante's films, which at times would be crazy, funny, and quirky. The score for Explorers has all this, and it also has that feel-good music that inspires you and takes you to faraway places. The pop stuff featured in this film is your standard 80s pop, and Robert Palmer does a cover of a Little Richard song, All Around the World, and the original music by Little Richard features in the movie. Night Ranger and Red 7, who I have never heard of, do some typical 80s pop. The song Thunder Road by Bruce Springsteen is referenced in the movie. There is so much to love about Explorers. The main actors, Ethan Hawke, River Phoenix, and even Jason Presson, who is, I think, underrated. Pity his career never went anywhere. The three actors have a great chemistry and work very well together. It's always heartbreaking to see River Phoenix in this film because you see his raw talent and what he could have been. Sadly, his life was cut short at the age of 23 from a cocktail of drugs in 1993. Ethan Hawke became very close friends with River on the set. Explorers, regardless of its many problems, still succeeds in drawing you in and has a charm about it. And the film takes me back to when I was a kid, a time when we were optimistic about the future and wanted to follow our dreams, and anything was possible. And I also love Dante's many references to science fiction, and I can truly relate to the main character, Ben. This film is made by someone who truly loves movies and all things sci-fi. The effects by Industrial Light and Magic are great, especially the circuit board dream sequences, and the drive-in sequence is one of my favourite moments in the film. The film's major downfall is the reveal of the aliens, which is kind of a letdown because you expect something more, but instead we get these goofy, cartoony looking aliens, and the film goes into silly territory. Explorers has certainly developed a cult following over the years. Joe Dante, often when reflecting on the film, has said he is appreciative of the warm reception it has earned over the years, but has said, "The problem for me is that the movie you'll see is not the movie I wanted to make. It's the movie I got to make up to a certain point, and then had to stop. It's hard for me to look at it, because it's not the film I quite had in mind. Maybe someday soon they will release it." I'm really hoping Dante will decide to put together the actual finished movie with all the scenes that got cut. Explorers, regardless, is still a gem of a film, and it's always worth rewatching. My name's JonnyBaak. Thanks for watching.